Okay, so I guess I've got to respond to this, unfortunately, because yet again, Ukraine is being used for domestic political ends in the United States. And before I say anything else, this really does piss me off. You guys don't give a damn about Ukraine, those of you who are using this as some sort of political football. You're just trying to score points against the other side. You don't give a damn about Ukrainians who are dying. Having said that, okay, so the situation with this guy, Ryan Wesley Routh, who apparently tried to take a shot or whatever he intended to do against former President Donald Trump. Firstly, I've covered over a dozen wars and conflicts, and they are like magnets for people who have serious psychological and mental health issues. Whether it is somebody with a massive savior complex or darkly those with intents like homicidal intent. There is something about the nature of war that, brings out folks like this. I've seen it time and time again. I mean, there's stories I could tell. But this war in particular, for whatever reason, and I have my ideas why this is, but for whatever reason, this war in particular does seem to be drawing them out in a larger portion. Maybe it's because you can easily get here. You just hop on a plane to Warsaw, you cross the border. Ukraine is not a closed country. They are eager to get any kind of assistance. So international foreigners, international folks coming in are welcome. Hopefully you get folks coming in with the intent to do good. But, inevitably you're going to get folks with selfish or bad intent coming in, or unhinged, like this guy seemed to be. Yeah. Now, of course, folks are going to say to me, well, look in the mirror, Phil. What are you doing there? What's your intent? And, okay, fair enough. Yeah. And I ask myself that on a regular basis. What is it that I'm doing here? Am I doing any good? Folks who have followed me for a while, and it's not hard to find, will know that I have a reason for being here, and I hope I'm being sincere with myself as much as anything else as to why I'm sticking it out and why I'm giving so much of my life to this conflict. I guess it goes back to the old ethical question of, is there such a thing as a truly selfless act? And I have struggled over this issue for many, many years because, again, I've seen these people rocking up to these conflicts and these tragedies. Always kind of the savior complex guys that piss me off the most. Look at me, I'm helping. Look how good I am. I try to keep myself in check with that, but I have come to a conclusion when it comes to this issue of is there such a thing as a selfless act? At the end of the day, if you're helping, then I'm not really going to be too hypercritical of your motivation until it interferes with the cause or the effort, whatever it is you're aimed at. When it becomes more about me than it does about what millions of people are trying to achieve or for the betterment of whatever cause it is, well, then you've got a problem. And I think what's what happened with this guy. The other problem that happens with that, however, is that when you have this kind of savior complex, or when you have this, drive that comes from ego rather than a sincere, honest desire to be of help in a situation that you think requires help, is that when you're rejected, that can be a blow, and it will elicit anger. Or, for example, when you run into others who are equally running around with their own ego-driven desires and you clash, swiftly it becomes more about you, more about this clash than it does about whatever it is you're trying to achieve. I see it all the time. I've seen it so many, many times, and it's happening here now as well. Anyway, ultimately, I think that's what happened with this guy mentally, where he is, his kind of character. I've seen them before. Now, when it comes to the actual story, first off, Routh was never in the Legion. I have spoken directly to people who are in the Legion or were in the Legion and are in the know. This guy approached the Legion repeatedly. He was rejected because he was clearly unstable. That has not always been the case with the Legion, sadly. Folks have gotten through, or then they get traumatized once they're on the other side and actually in combat, for example, or to say that there is no problem with unstable individuals in the Legion would be putting your head in the sand. But this guy, there are well-documented communiques and correspondence with this guy in which the Legion is clearly saying, we don't have anything to do with you. It could be, like he's a Travis Bickle type, and when he didn't succeed with that, he just went in for something else. So there's this narrative now that he's a Ukrainian operative, or some sort of foreign intelligence like CIA or MI6 is using him and his connections to Ukraine to ultimately use as an operative. Already we're kind of into tinfoil hat territory when we talk about that kind of stuff. I've seen a couple, more than a couple, intelligence operations in my time in the field as a foreign correspondent and journalist. They are very rarely this ham-fisted. Not never, but very rarely do they leave a so easily traceable trail that could be picked up. No, I think this is people creating the narrative that comes from their desire for the narrative to be true. Again, using Ukraine for your own purposes and not a whit of care about the country itself. Makes me very, very angry. So, as far as could he have been a Ukrainian agent sent to assassinate potentially the next president of the United States, who is openly, along with his running mate, stated that he would basically sell Ukraine down the river, and so the Ukrainians sent an assassin to head that off at the pass. Bull, absolute and utter bull. Ukraine relies on American aid, and you always have to consider in these kind of circumstances your risk and reward ratio. And for Kiev to put this forward for the possibility of killing Trump, and in which case Vance, who's even worse on Ukraine, would take his place. I mean, the world is a bizarre place and things happen, but it makes no sense whatsoever. Were this guy to be caught, as he has been, with his ties to Ukraine, that would be suicidal for the Zelensky administration or for Ukrainian intelligence. I disregard that narrative almost out of hand. Finally, though, there is this narrative of what if he's a Russian operative? There's a lot of talk here in Ukraine. Now, maybe they're trying to, offset any kind of smell of guilt or whatever. But I have heard it floated that, he could have been co-opted or could have been, weaponized by Russian intelligence. Certainly, he was down on Maidan an awful lot, and he stood out as a foreigner, as an English speaker, the clothing he wore, his demeanor, all the rest of it. If you're a Russian intelligence officer operating covertly in Kiev, and I don't know how extensive that network is, but to think that there aren't Russian sympathizers or active agents in a variety of Ukrainian cities is, again, to stick your head in the sand. So the story that's being kind of bounced around with this particular pattern or this particular narrative, a Russian sees him, sees he's in Ukraine, sees all this other stuff, and they find a way to weaponize him and try to smear Ukraine with his insanity and his mental illness through this kind of an effort. Again, I don't believe this either. I think this is also going into tinfoil hat region. So no, the guy was ill. The guy is sick, and wars, conflicts, they are like a magnet. They are like a center of gravity for people with mental illness. It happens all the time. Now, one final quick note, for all of those out there who are going like, oh, but there's this Ukrainian military document. Look, there's a paper for everything in this country. There's a reason why it's called Byzantine law. There's paperwork upon paperwork upon paperwork, and I'll explain why that is maybe in another video sometime. But it means very little in my mind. I mean, it could have also just been a way for the Ukrainian military to sign off and try to get this guy out of their office, get him away, which I think kind of the Legion did as well. It's just like, let's just brush this guy off, and we don't want to deal with him. That may have fed his mental illness. I don't know. Anyhow, but for those of you who are saying, oh, but look, he was in this video, or, ooh, he took a photo with this person, you got to understand, Maidan Square is not a big place. And unless there's a large funeral or a protest or an event of some kind, there's maybe a couple dozen people milling around the square, especially around the memorial section. If you're a camera crew on the ground for whatever reason, and this guy approaches you, he speaks English, even with his obvious kind of bizarre behavior, you might very well take advantage of it. Or if you're a notable person who's on there and he's seeking the cameras, clearly, the path of least resistance is take a quick picture and then get the hell away from him. I don't think there's anything more insidious in it than that. I'd like to say if I were a camera crew, a news crew on Maidan, and this guy approached me and I got him on tape speaking English, I'd like to say I wouldn't use him. It depends on how much other material I had, to choose from, I suppose. I'd like to say I wouldn't because, clearly not somebody you want to profile or give oxygen to. No, he was a sick guy. He is a sick guy. He needs help. I don't think there's anything more to it than simply that. The Ukraine connection is simply because Ukraine is one of the biggest stories of any of our lives. What happens here is going to determine the future of Europe and East-West relations. So, of course, there's, this focus, the spotlight on it, and he craved that spotlight for whatever reason, or perhaps he genuinely thought he was doing something good, as I described with this savior complex kind of mentality. Just again to reiterate, don't make this about Ukraine. This is about a sick man who needs help. This is not about Republicans versus Democrat. This is not deep state. This is not, whatever you want to say in your trying to process what in the end I think was just the result of a very ill man who happened to travel to Ukraine. Take care of yourselves, guys. This is going to keep happening. The Russians are out there, and they're going to be pushing their information war techniques. And even if they didn't have anything to do with this originally, you better bet they're involved using it now.